I was listening to an audiobook earlier today, and it was published in 1889. And I've listened to a lot of these audiobooks that were published anywhere from the mid 19th century up to the mid 20th century. And I'm always so surprised by the incredible amount of depth and understanding that these people possessed, even though they were nowhere near as technologically advanced as we are today. They were so much further along in terms of humanity, like in terms of understanding truth, who we are, what we are, why we're here, etc. And it's just become like abundantly clear to me that we have lost our plot. We have lost our way. We're almost like out of our depth here, because humans only survived as long as we've survived because we've had certain understandings with each other, you know? And now we don't look at each other as people anymore. We look at each other as obstacles or threats or means to an end. No matter where you're from, you can have your best friend you've known forever, but you're still watching your back. A lot of people, most people, are still watching their back as if they can't even trust the people they grew up with, their brothers, their sisters, their parents. Like, it's kind of sickening. But the name of the book was called Thoughts Are Things by Prentice Mulford. And I got about halfway through it. I was listening to the audiobook version. And dude, this guy was on some profound shit. Like, he knew his shit. And he goes on to state a couple things. I'm going to list 5 things that I learned from my little study session today, including this audiobook. 1, thoughts are things, whether you believe them to be or not. So we're split into 2. We have the material self, the body, the corporal being of us, which is mostly like interested in material desires, etc. And then we have the spirit, our upper being, the upper self, which is, it lives mostly in the thoughts, the realm of thought. And nothing separates anything else in the realm of thought. So like, simply us thinking good about one another or doing good for one another, not out of some sort of like societal duty, like, oh, people are going to look at me like a shitty person if I don't do this, but like genuinely wanting to do good, that act, whatever it is you may have done, the physical effects of that will wear off far earlier than the actual effects that the higher self passed on to that person, to their higher self. Okay, so this can happen consciously or unconsciously. You can just be thinking bad shit about somebody, or you and a group of people, because it works, it multiplies. So like, let's say there's a whole group of gossiping ass bitches, straight up, just talking shit about people. It will affect whoever they're talking about, whether they know it or not. But at the same time, it affects them, whether they know it or not. And what has an effect up here on the spirit self, inevitably and eventually has an effect on the material body as well, for everybody. So that was one thing. So thoughts are quite literally things. You need to watch how we like direct these, Same way you wouldn't point a gun at a kid. You don't want to point negative thoughts at children and shit too, because it's going to affect them. The second thing was that thoughts move on currents. So a single thought will almost operate like a magnet in a way that it will find the nearest wave of thoughts from all other humans or upper selves. We're all releasing thoughts on certain wavelengths, and those wavelengths will combine and create a current of thought, which can have like an avalanche effect, which is great if you're thinking the right thoughts. But if you allow yourself to fall into the habit of thinking the wrong thoughts, that can quickly deteriorate your life. Like, without you even knowing it, you end up being somewhere you never thought you'd be, you didn't want to be, and you don't even know how you got there. So it's super important to monitor our thoughts, because Once our thought gets onto the current, or our thought processes begin to operate on certain currents, the same way, like I said, it operates like a magnet, how it pulls itself onto other currents of similar like thought, you also attract whole currents of like thought to you, the same that you put out. Which I know all of this sounds so cliche and, so 2012 law of attraction. It's not even that. It's just recognizing that thoughts are so crucial. Not like I'm going to manifest $1 million in my bank account, but that the thoughts that I think lead to the actions that I do, which inevitably will lead to the $1 million in my bank account, which whatever, who gives a fuck about $1 million? The third thing was, don't talk bad about yourself, because in order to talk bad about yourself, you first have to think about what you're going to say. So when you're thinking it on that higher spiritual level, and then you're speaking it on the lower manifested body level, the carnal level, it will eventually come to fruition quicker than you could have ever expected. So don't talk bad about yourself. Like, we're all people, and every representation of the spirit, no matter what it is sacred. It's divine. Like, we're okay. Like, be kinder to yourself. And then 4, be kinder to others, not just people, but to beings, flowers, plants, trees, water creatures, fucking birds, sharks, whatever, dude. Be kinder to everything, because that kindness extended outward is the same idea of like the current of thoughts, right? The wavelength of the energy of your thoughts, even if it's something, so small, to instead of like killing a spider, you catch it, you put it outside. You didn't kill it, not out of like the duty of not killing it. You didn't kill it because you didn't want it to die. And that kindness that you extended to it will inevitably come back to you on the higher realm. So you got to try to stay in that wavelength towards everything. And then number 5 was learn to say no. We all have habits and vices and, flaws and whatever, but we need to learn to change the way we see those flaws about ourselves in order to build a sort of like a temple of confidence and happiness, because happiness doesn't come from without altogether, so to speak. Nothing without can cause permanent happiness, Only within can we sort of start to build that happiness. And then people around you can feel like, this guy doesn't give a shit about what nobody thinks about him. Like, he's a happy person. Like, that's cool, and really it's up to us. So we need to learn to say no in the moment to those things that, if we're deliberate and we're conscious of our day-to-day, we know they bring unhappiness, or we know they at least bring the thoughts that make us unhappy, which attracts the currents of thought that make us unhappy, which turn into our reality. So we need to start saying no to the things we know are bad for us on the long term, on every level, and find ourselves trying to attract those currents of thoughts that we know are good for us, so we can say yes to the things that will inevitably benefit us. And this book was written in 1889, bro. They got it. You can go and listen to it on YouTube. Master Key Society. Just type it in. Thoughts Are Things. They just published the audiobook for free on YouTube 3 days ago. And it's worth the listen. It's crazy. It's a good book. Check it out. Just something to think about for today, man. Y'all be good. Y'all have a good day. Peace.